archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls. I'm your host, Patricia Baker. I'm here with my co-host, Miss PK, all the way from Tucson. How are you tonight, PK?
Well, right now I'm somewhat de-stressed.
Oh.
It's rained here. It stops for sprinkles, then it starts again, and it stops again. And it's kind of one of those kooky Arizona days.
Oh, gosh. At least you don't have snow and ice. We just had that. It was like the ice capades up here.
Gee, and I've missed the good stuff. All I get is a few raindrops, just enough to make you think something's really going to happen, and nothing happens.
Oh, gosh. Well, you know how I feel about the Southwest. It's one of my favorite places. You're lucky to live there.
Well, get on a plane. Come stay with me.
I know. I'm going to. I promise.
You've been telling me that for 2 years.
Okay. Well, I'll keep promising.
I'm going to hold my breath.
Well, you know what I have to come out there for? I've got to come out there and go searching for crystal skulls. That's
that's right.
We've got Mark Olly back from the UK. He's kind enough again to stay up late to talk to us.
Isn't that sweet of him? That's wonderful.
And he's a sweetheart, and he's an expert. And
yes, he is.
So we're lucky to have him here tonight. But before we bring him on, let's find out what is going on. We've got all kinds of talk about upcoming eclipses and things. And
yes, you asked about the solar eclipse, and I'm not exactly the best at things like this, but I did do a little checking. And really, the solar eclipse always occurs on a new moon, and a lunar eclipse happens on a full moon. Mm-hmm. So the moon nodes need to be close to the sun and the moon to have an eclipse. So the moon nodes are intersecting between the orbit of the sun and the moon. So that's what's going on there. These two eclipses season a year, every 6 months. So there's going to be a solar eclipse within the next few days coming up. And 2 weeks before the April 8th, the solar eclipse will be in the lunar eclipse that happened on March 25th. It's very hard to watch these bouncing balls, but we're taking a look at this. But the eclipse occurs at 19 degrees of Aries. So this is a little close to anybody's birthday, which happens to be my eldest son's birthday's on the 30th. It's going to really do a little shake, rattle, and roll for them.
Oh.
So eclipse energy is like a huge Mercury retrograde. Mm-hmm. And you know when that happens, what we go through.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
And we've got one of those coming anyway. So we're just going to have to sit back, hold on to the side of the boat, ride it out, and pray a lot. I know I'm going to.
Definitely. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll be joined in prayer. Yes.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people talking about this and predicting kinds of torrential rains and earthquakes and tsunamis and all kinds of things. So, and then, of course, they say that the grid may go down, which would be horrible. Mm-hmm. Not, but get supplies just in case.
Definitely.
At least 48 hours. So, oh my.
And now, where was it? I was just trying to remember where it was that they have an infestation taking place right now. I forget what critter it was. It just started. I want to say Puerto Rico, but that's not right. But one of the islands, they've got some issues taking place right now. With critters.
Critters. Okay.
Yes, well, little critters.
I've heard, I studied, as you know, with a lot of Native American medicine men and women. And one of the things that Slow Turtle always said, he said, you want to know what's coming? Watch the animals. Mm-hmm. I've gotten some reports about elephants and elephants that are in, refuges and also, in the wild. They're watching them go to higher ground. So all of them are going to higher ground.
There's water coming.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So keep that in mind. Watch the animals in your area. I mean, last night it was really strange. We heard the alarms going off on the driveway, which tells us something's on the move. And we turned the lights on. There was an extremely large coyote/wolf. They're hybrids up here.
Oh, my goodness.
They're about the size of a good German Shepherd. They're not like the coyotes you see out in your area.
Mm-hmm.
Anyways, this thing was hightailing it up the driveway, and there was nothing behind it that we could see, but it was running like crazy. Got up close to the house and then did a walk around and headed off into the woods. Very unusual. Usually they meander up the driveway. There's usually two of them. They hang out, look for rodents, which we very much appreciate.
Yes, definitely set them all down.
And then they were gone. So there is definitely something the animals are picking up on. I'm mostly sensing that pole shift that we've been warned about. That's what I'm sensing. And also, there have been a lot of fish they've talked about that are just swimming in circles. So
that
again,
makes sense. We've been talking about all this. I've had a couple bobcats walking through the front yard the last 2 days.
Kidding. Wow.
And they're small by comparison if I think of the big cat, but they're still as big as the coyotes.
Oh yeah.
They're stronger. And I watched it sitting in my front yard and I thought, oh, I don't think so.
Yeah, what are they doing? So yeah, we have a big one up here that looks like he goes to the gym. I mean, he's got muscles. I mean, I wish I had those kind of muscles. Very powerful, muscular animal. I'll have to post a picture of it. But yeah, they're up here all the time. But that behavior of the coyote/wolf was very unusual. So anyway, I'm going to keep a watch out. I'll post anything that I see. We did have a moose up here, which is again unusual. Usually the moose only come up when there's a drought. And we haven't had that. We've had a tremendous.
No, that's for sure.
So that was unusual too. He stopped and posed for the camera, did a selfie.
That was nice of him to do a selfie. Did you know where to send it?
He went on his way, I guess. He sent it to me. I posted it. So anyhow.
Oh, that's cute.
Well, we, as you know, have a great guest tonight. We've had
Mark
on before. He is just so knowledgeable. He is a scholar. He is an archaeologist. He is a researcher, and he just has a wealth of information about all things paranormal, and a book about crystal skulls and human heads. So we got to get him on right now because we got a lot to talk about. Mark,
for sure.
Welcome to the show. Great to have you back. Hi. Thank you.
It's nice to be here. Nice to be back.
Our pleasure.
So much. Now, please tell us what got you into the crystal skulls.
Well, there was two things really, and the clue is in the title of the book. One is the crystal skulls element, and I have over the years followed the whole mythology and science of the crystal world till eventually, by default, and I'll tell you the story as we go along, I've ended up with one. So I've now got a crystal skull. So that inspired me to do that. And then at the same time, as an archaeologist, there was a lot of talk, shall we say, about these strange elongated skulls that turn up. But as an archaeologist, I'm thinking, okay, they're not aliens, but they're everywhere. So there is a mystery. There is a real deep mystery there. So I thought, okay, let's have a look at the history of both of those things and just use the human head as the theme. Because everybody's got one. Every archaeological site turns them up. There's carvings of them everywhere. So let's just use the human head as a theme and produce a book. And it's come out all right. It was quite a nice thing to do under lockdown, back in 2020.
For sure.
Yeah, so that's where it's taken me. So I've looked at the science of heads. I've looked at the science of crystals. I've looked how the brain works. Different sized heads, where they come up in history, what effect that has on us. So I really sort of covered it as best I could. It's an archaeological book about mythological and spiritual subjects. That's how I'd describe it. It's the science and the fact behind the mythology. That's what I was aiming for. So I hope I've succeeded.
Well, your book is wonderful, but pull it together for our audience if you would. So we've got stories that we've heard on the show about a certain number of crystal skulls that there are in the world. So can you tell us a little bit about that mythology and how that feeds into the science or vice versa?
Okay. Well, I tackle that in the second part of the book, but it doesn't matter. We can go in there first. The thing that got me over the years is that I frequently ended up at Mind Body Spirit fairs, because I've got a lot of friends that do the Mind Body Spirit events and what have you. And like you say, through the 1970s, the 80s, the 90s, there was this idea of bringing all of the original Aztec Mayan crystal skulls together, and if you could get them all together, and if they were the original ones, there'd be some kind of miraculous exchange that would take place between these different skulls, whether it was information or, whether they all lit up like in the Indiana Jones movie, or, something would happen and it would initiate a change. And they actually did bring them together. They brought the Mitchell Hedges skull, which is the very famous one, the absolutely perfect crystal one, which was found in Belize, in Labanton. That's the one they brought into the middle. And then they surrounded that with 12 other handmade Aztec skulls. And they did it in the 1970s. So at the point where they did that, it's before all the fakes and the tourist ones. And, there's tens of thousands of them now made of all kinds of different crystal. And really the only way to tell whether they're, quote, genuine is to have a look whether they're handmade or whether they've been done by machine tools. And a vast majority of them are machine tools, unfortunately. I've actually got a copy. The Mitchell Hedges skull, this is a copy of it, looks a bit like that.
That's
beautiful. Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the Mitchell Hedges one. The reason the Mitchell Hedges one is unusual is because of that.
Yes.
Okay, it has a separate jaw that actually on the Mitchell Hedges one comes off completely. And it's anatomically perfect. And at the same time, it's the only one that's been subject to electron microscope. I can't say microscopy. Oh, I just did. So it's been subjected to that. And in all of the different areas you would expect to find man-made damage, where it's been scratched or filed or smoothed off, there's nothing. So the Mitchell Hedges skull, no matter what anybody says, you can argue it might be a fake, you can argue where it came from, you can argue about the age, but at the end of the day, nobody has the foggiest idea how this thing was made. So it is a genuine physical archaeological mystery. That's what it is. So Mitchell Hedges, that's where it all really begins, the most famous one. Anna, to her dying day, I think she died in 2017, insisted that she found it under an altar, an Aztec altar in the jungle in Belize on her 14th birthday back in the 1930s. And if you ever get to see a photograph of her dad, he's a typical Victorian archaeologist, and he really doesn't look like the kind of guy that would play pranks. He's not that kind of guy at all. Terribly serious. So I'm fairly convinced it's a real story, and that that particular skull is a genuine Aztec skull.
Now, where did you get this one?
That one, it's a copy. Some friends of mine had a company over here that was manufacturing skulls in resin. So this one is a resin one, and they had a bash at doing the Mitchell Hedges one. I think they only got 3 that actually worked, and this is one of them. Because as you can see, it's difficult to produce one that is an accurate copy. But it is only resin. It is only a resin copy. The original one is in the Mitchell Hedges family. They've still got theirs, and rightly so, because it's theirs. But that gives you some idea of what we're talking about when we say crystal skulls. That's a copy of the most famous. Anyway, they brought all of the different skulls together, my other crystal skull included, because there's this photograph of them all, and mine's the bottom left-hand one. Back in the 70s, they referred to him as Jason, and he's got a story all of his own. But that particular skull was part of that, and nothing happened.
Disappointing.
They brought all these skulls together with high expectations, and nothing happened. But the surprise, the bit that surprised me, and this is the science, in the 1970s, there was an idea of crystals perhaps being what they call recorders. And clear quartz is perhaps the best recorder of them all. And the idea was that somehow this crystal could encode information. Okay, fast forward all the way up to 2013. And there's a company associated with a university in this country. And they thought, I wonder if we could use quartz silica, or as we know it, glass. I wonder if we could use it and write data in it. So they had a bash at doing it, and they used this incredible laser system they've got. It's laboratory. They managed to write data in there in 5D, and they've produced CDs the size of the palm of your hand that will last for 34,000 years before they start to degrade.
Wow.
And you can get the entire library of planet Earth, are you ready for this, on a 3-inch glass disc.
Oh, my goodness. Incredible.
So the theory has proven to work in practice. And of course, the question is, well, if the ancients were mucking about with that technology, number one, how did they know? And number two, how the heck do we get that data out of a crystal? Because obviously it doesn't work for ordinary quartz crystal. It only works for, constructed silica glass. But quartz silica, mind-boggling stuff. Mind-boggling stuff.
Really? I had no idea. No idea that was possible.
Let me give you an example. I'll give you the most mind-blowing example of the lot. And I wondered about this. In science, there was a thing for many, many, many years called Olson's paradox. Now, Olson's paradox is how do you build a model of planet Earth on a computer and make the model work? So they would build a model of planet Earth and they'd shove in the iron core, which we're supposed to have, with magnets and electricity and this, that, and the other. And the whole model wouldn't work. So they tried it again and again. I mean, this Olson's paradox has been running for a hell of a long time. They've been trying to solve the paradox until some bright spark came along and said, well, look, for the core of planet Earth, why don't we try quartz silica? Now, you know where this is going, don't you? So, of course, they bang in quartz silica into the model to see what happens. Ta-da! They've solved the paradox. It works. But the upshot of that is they can be quite specific. The amethyst, which is a form of quartz with an impurity in it, that's what the core of planet Earth is made of. And as soon as you put it into a working model on a large-scale computer, it works fine. So we're sat on a giant crystal ball flying through the cosmos. That is basically what planet Earth is. So that was the one that really,
that's incredible.
Absolutely blew the top off my head.
Yes. Mine too. I have no more top to my head. Yeah.
Well, as soon as you put that into the computer, it all starts to work because you get life on Earth, you get electricity, you get magnetism, you get thunder and lightning, you get, gravity, you get everything works from the energy that you get in quartz. I mean, if you crush a quartz crystal, it'll power a wristwatch. That's why you've got these watches that pulsate, because it pulsates back. Even the military use it as a little source to power a wristwatch. So when you see quartz written on the dial, that's what they're doing.
That's what it means.
Watching a quartz crystal.
Never knew.
I was ignorant to this.
Made two of us.
Like I said, once you get into it, all this idea of, having quartz as like, double pointed Atlantean recorders and, it's got power for this and power for that. And actually, you'd be amazed how much science has proven that that's actually true.
True.
So I always say it's a tiny book, but the consequences of the book I've written are actually quite big. There's a lot to it.
Let me ask you another question, if I may. Yeah. We've also heard a lot of stories about the crystal skulls and people being in rooms with them and they hear voices.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, there's a fantastic one over here. There aren't many crystal skulls that are old. Okay, I've got to say most of them, the old ones, come from a guy in Paris called Boban, who operated in the early part of the Victorian era, so 1810, 1820, 1830. And he was a genuine seller of Aztec antiquities. Everything he ever sold was real. But he sold quite a few crystal skulls to different museums. And one of those crystal skulls has ended up in the British Museum. And they have to keep it in a cabinet with a lockable door that shuts at night because it does glow and make strange noises and do weird things. And they've lost security staff because of it. So they shut it in at night. So absolutely, these things are, they are a bit special.
Well, they're alive. I mean, they must have either encapsulated great amounts of energy, or they are alive in and of themselves, or both, right?
Like that one.
Yeah.
There you go. That's mine. There he is.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
Amazing. Look at that.
That's a real one.
That's a real one.
Yeah, you're looking at a genuine one there. That's the real thing. Now, how do I know? Okay,
good question.
The book goes into some detail because obviously, as I say, there are tens of thousands of these knocking around now, which are essentially fakes because they're just machine made. Well, obviously, first of all, that is not machine made. Everything you see there has been filed down by hand. You can tell on top as well. I don't know if you can see reflecting, but that top is covered in flat facets and flat surfaces.
You can see that.
Yeah,
it's been filed down from an enormous block of crystal. Also, the front of it is milky quartz. The inside of it actually is clear quartz, and the back is smoky quartz. So what they've done is they've cut the skull according to the crystal. That's thousands of man hours to produce something like that. It began in South America. That's where this was found, but it was left with the Mayans. Now, the Mayans don't get on very well with Aztec stuff. The Aztecs were invaders, so the Mayans don't really get on with stuff like this. So just after the Second World War, this was given to an aid worker, a British aid worker, who brought it over here, brought it to the UK. And then when he got extremely old, he passed this on to his Masonic Lodge master, who in turn got extremely old, hunted me out as an archaeologist and passed it on to me. So I'm only the third owner of this. Its style is pre-Columbian. It's definitely got an Aztec look to it, which means it's probably between 500 and 800 years old. But you would never be able to do that. At the moment, they can't date stone. They're working on a method that involves moisture loss, where they can work out how old something is. But that's mine. So if anything creepy happens, or you start getting strange phenomena, or all of a sudden I disappear in a blue flash,
you know why.
It's Jason here that's causing the problem. So.
Have you had any telepathic contact with your crystal skull?
I've not connected with that. I am spiritually sensitive, and I do pick up on things like that. I think it's actually quite peaceful. It's quite a calm object to me. But I have taken him out on a couple of events over the years, and one or two people have been a little bit creeped out by him. But as a rule, this one doesn't seem to present any problem. I haven't walked in one day to find him glowing in a glass case somewhere. He's not, and he doesn't freak the cats out, which is a fair,
That's a good assessment.
Good indicator that he's not active at the moment. And I don't think he's particularly had a bad background either. A couple of the other things as well, giving you a couple of things to identify a real one. The other thing is it's got to be life size. So it's got to be kind of child size, or at least, plausible or bigger, and preferably not massive. If it's huge, then it's probably not right. All the ones that I know of that exist that are genuine are life size. There's one buried in the ballpark at Cobra. It's still there, made of white quartz. That's actually in situ, so we know they definitely had them. There was another one found that was a little bit smaller, a child-sized one, not far outside Mexico City. That was found on an archaeological site, so that one's documented. Then you got Mitchell Hedges, then you got this one, and then there's a couple of others in museums. Worldwide, though, there's probably only about a dozen, maybe, possibly less.
So the mythology was, if you get all these skulls together, something's going to happen. Nothing did.
No.
So there's got to be some other purpose then.
Yeah, well...
What do you think?
Yes.
We've done a lot of work with the one I've got. I mean, he's just here. If I keep kind of patting him on the head, he's sat here on my laptop. We've done a lot of work with him. concerning light. Because of the way they've cut the crystal with the white front and the dark back and the clear in the centre, we tended to mess about a lot with lights. And it does look like the optical side of it is quite important. It looks like this thing was designed, especially if I get the other one back. I mean, you can imagine the Mitchell Hedges one. If you hold something like that up during a ritual with the sun in the right position, it's just gonna look phenomenal. Absolutely incredible. So I rather think they were literally, bling. They were for a display to show, might and power and riches and everything else that goes with it.
Do you think you also used, since you did mention the Mitchell Hedges one was found at the base of an altar?
Well, what had happened was it was in the ruins of a temple, and it was her birthday. So her dad said, "Look, clear off and go, explore." So she's off rummaging through some of these ruins, and it was a collapsed table altar. And she went round the back, and she actually found that bit. She found the top bit, this piece. Took it back to her dad, and her dad's like, "Wow, that's pretty incredible. Where did that come from?" So she took him back, and he actually found the jawbone. The jaw piece underneath an altar. So it does look like these things were at least stored in temples. The story I got for mine as well was that it came from the ruins of an Aztec temple. That's where that one comes from.
So I wonder, I mean, if you're talking about all of this used perhaps in a ceremonial way, but were they constructed originally to transmit information, to communicate?
Well, actually, in a funny sort of way, that feeds into the second part of the book, which is actually the first part, but we won't bother about the order. The guys that are making these are obsessed with skulls and heads. They're obsessed. But it goes even further than that, because if you look at, for example, the Paracas, which are down in Peru, their actual skulls are these massive, great, long, elongated heads that you see. Some of the skulls are 3.5 times bigger than ours. So these are usually all regular. They're all regular size and shape. They don't look like they do in the Indiana Jones movie. They're not like that. But the worst part of it is the real human skulls are like that. They're absolutely enormous. So they seem to have some kind of knowledge based on the fact that they have bigger brains, they have bigger capacity. What I often say when I do talks on this subject is I say, well, just imagine if one of these guys with these enormous heads happens to be born with the same capacity, say, as Einstein. So he's a really super intelligent guy, just happens to be born that way. But he's got 3.5 Einsteins stuck on his head. He's got this massive brain, huge brain, enormous wet computer. Then, let's imagine a bit more. Somewhere in the jungles of South America, there's 10 of these guys, and they're all sat round in a room, and somebody walks in and goes, "How do you build a pyramid?" And this guy goes, "Hang on, just give me a second." There you go. That's how you do it. Because that's how fast they would be able to compute with a brain that size. Now, the interesting thing about this is that they're everywhere. So they're not just in the Paracas of South America. They're on every continent on planet Earth, these guys with enormous heads. They were even trading women with these big heads from Russia to medieval Europe as like an essential part of, you must have this in your home. This is the latest technology. These people with enormous heads, and they could do things that clearly nobody else could do. And the real shame of it is the Paracas only died out about 400 years ago. It was the illnesses that the Spanish took over to South America, killed them off. So it's just a shame we can't sit down and actually talk to one of these people with the enormous heads. But as it turns out, it goes even further, because it goes to the idea of there being different human species. And when I wrote the book, there were 9 species. So you had like Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo sapiens. There was a Eurasian 1, Eurasian 2, all these different genetic markers that had been picked up. Now, the book's not that old because, like I say, I wrote it during lockdown. They're already up to 27 other genetic species of human beings. One of them is the tiny little pygmies of Flores Island. Now, they only grew to about 3'6". They were tiny, fully adult, and just over 3 foot. And I'm going to throw another one into the melting pot. I'm going to say giants. You know, the giants of old, all that sort of thing.
Yes.
They're everywhere as well. They're just another human species. You know,
well, we've been lied to, haven't we, by the museums who've been covering things up, and it doesn't meet their timeline. So they're trying to get rid of it. I heard they were getting rid of some of the things they had in the museum that supported this.
Yes, I've heard that.
Yeah, things tend to vanish. Do you know that famous Raiders of the Lost Ark, the last thing where you see the warehouse with all those boxes?
Oh, yeah.
I don't think they throw them into rivers or burn them or grind them up, although that having been said, there are one or two people I know that would do that, which is a shame. But I don't think they actually get away with that. I think it's more like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. They just vanish into the storerooms and all that. But just back to what you were saying about these crystals and what have you, holding data and things like that. I think the actual size of the human skulls and the capabilities of human beings back then, it just didn't necessitate that. You know, that's kind of the answer. I got there in the end. It was a long road, but we got there in the end. I think what's more miraculous are the human species, you know, the people. Absolutely phenomenal, you know. We just happen to be still here because, you know, it's not the survival of the most intelligent, it's survival of the fittest, you know. So I think we're the warriors, you know. We're kind of the fighters, and that's the only reason we're still here, because we tend to wipe everything else out, you know, as we go along.
Yes.
That's the picture that we're getting anyway. Things like, you know, we got rid of the Neanderthals, we got rid of the Denisovans, you know, which is a shame because we're worse off for it.
Well, I'm not going to say negative things, but I could about us as a species. But at the same time, I wonder, maybe the skulls don't want to talk to us today.
Well, yeah. There is that. I mean, in the 1970s, they said, you know, we'll get them all together and it'll change the world. And it didn't. But now, in the 21st century, we do actually have the science now to fire lasers into glass and recover data. So I treat that as the first big step towards actually being able to read natural crystal structures. Which I think sooner or later we'll be able to do. It's, you know, if you really want to go, it's conspiracy, it's NASA, it's, you know, it's hidden science, it's, you know, secret technology, it's all of that. So we're going down another rabbit hole there. I think they probably could, if they really wanted to now, get data out of some of these skulls and what have you. What on earth they'd find in there, I dread to think.
It would be incredible, I'm sure, but you know, the way that they've covered so many things up and told us lies about our history. So I can imagine that there's a lot to these crystal skulls we haven't even begun to figure out yet.
Well, you guys like ghosts. I know. I gathered that you've got this supernatural angle to what you do. So a lot of the people involved in the ghost hunting scene, in the paranormal scene, believe that if there's quartz present in buildings, in structures, in areas, etc., ghosts could actually be a replay from the quartz. It could be nature's equivalent to a hologram, you know, and certain conditions trigger that off. There's a lot of paranormal investigators have reached that conclusion. And, you know, quartz is I think it's the number one most common. Quartz silica is the number one most common substance on planet Earth. So, you know, we're carbon life forms, but we're living in a silica world. So the entire world is pretty much made of silicon or silicon based. I mean, if you think about it, you know, I'm wearing silicon glasses. I'm talking to a silicon chip in a silicon computer. You know, you've got windows and glass all over your house. And it is literally everywhere, you know, everywhere. So
but
you can see where they're coming from.
The quartz crystal, so it's almost like it could create a hologram of a ghost. Could be like, help me, Obi-Wan.
Possibly. That's a good example. Yeah. I mean, when we project stuff and we actually show stuff, you know, and what have you, we're going through lenses. It's filmed through lenses. It's projected through lenses. It's all quartz. Everything we're doing is quartz. So it's that science, but used in a different way. And that's what the paranormal investigators are saying. Maybe quartz as a recorder, if you get the situation correct, it will play back.
Right.
We've not nailed it down yet. It's that simple. I like that theory. It's possible.
Yeah. Now, you must be familiar with Marcel Vogel's quartz crystals that he cut in a certain manner. Are you familiar with his work? I mean, that's another thing where he was able to cut these crystals in such a manner that they could do things that other crystals wouldn't do. So
it is a lot of it is about structure. It is about structure. Even in the crystal skull I've got, when you shine light through it, when they created this, there's like a plane that runs through it at an angle, and you get rainbows and effects on that plane. And given that the rest of it's deliberate, they must have deliberately left that rainbow plane in there. And again, I've got the skull; it's here. I have no idea how to use it. I don't know, how to get the best out of this. But it's there. I don't know even if you can see it, but it's inside. You can see the clear stripe across the top there. Yeah. There's actually a rainbow plane inside that.
That is amazing. Have you ever used water with your crystal, with your original?
You can do. Water's obviously.
The only reason I mention this, Mark, is because that's what keeps hitting me in the face. Is that particular skull is somehow connected to the electromagnetics of water. Maybe it needs a bath. I don't know. But
it might do. I mean, everything essentially is
little skinny dipping.
Yeah, it needs a bath. It wants water.
It is energy and wavelength. So
yeah, exactly. So maybe there's something about the electromagnetics of water that would open that further. So
I'll have a try.
Try and please get back to us. But that's what keeps coming to me for what it's worth. So, but you're so blessed to have the gift of an original.
Well, yeah,
fabulous.
It did find its way to me, and like I say, it's quite friendly. He's not a particularly unpleasant one. He's reasonable size, and he's quite friendly.
Yeah,
he is in the book. He does appear in the book. I can't remember if I put the story about how he came here in the book. I might not have done, but
let's put the book back up again for everybody.
Yes,
because it's a wonderful book.
It is. It is.
Skulls and Human Heads. It is by our guest Mark Olly. Love the cover. That is really magnificent. How did you get the cover like that?
There's an interesting story behind the cover. When I was doing the book, I've got a habit of experimenting with covers, and that is literally the cover I sent to the publisher. So I'm responsible for that. But I sent it to him and I said, "Oh, this is what I'd like it to look like." And he said, "Yes, so would I. I'll have that." so that is actually the rough design, and it ended up being the final design. I like the idea of the human head staring out through the quartz. It kind of says something about our intelligence and our capacities and being in this environment, this quartz environment. It was just a happy afternoon with a graphics package, and that's what resulted.
Beautiful,
for sure, definitely.
Yes. Well, that's the name of it, everybody. Make sure you get your own copy because it's filled with great information about this whole field.
Yes.
I mean, you've tapped into a lot of things here, Mark, in your book, but there's so much more.
Well, yeah. I mean, the way I walk through it as well, I don't want anybody to be scared off by the idea that it's archaeoscience and it's not heavy. It's not difficult, honestly. And I do it in a logical order. I start with the Victorians collecting skulls and then work from that and show how different species come about. And I don't get into the science, the crystal bit, till a bit further on. And I haven't really progressed with it much further than where it is in the book. So there isn't a great deal more to it. But if you really want to know where we're from and what's going on and, perhaps, what the establishment are trying to cover up, there is a hefty streak of conspiracy running behind it because I'm giving out information and I'm stringing things together that I don't think people have ever done before. There's a lot of original stuff in there.
Yes, exactly. Would you like to hear more of that?
Yeah, I would like to get stuck in and do a little bit more of that.
I
mean, this book was just the first of 3 because I just went nuts when I got to 60. I mean, like, when I passed my 60th birthday, I was like, this is it. I'm going to get rid of as much stuff as I can. I'm just so under lockdown, I went bonkers. I finished the King Arthur book, which I've been working on for 45 years. So that's now out.
Oh.
I finished this one, which I wrote actually for another publisher. But Philip Mantle at Flying Disc Press was brave enough to go with it as a subject.
Yes.
So I was really pleased with that. And the last one that I've just finished was Europe's Roswell 40 Years Since Impact, which was the UFO crash that left debris behind. But all 3 of those books are, as you say, investigative, factual, scientific, archaeological. It's the archaeology and the history behind Arthur. It's the actual pieces of your UFO that we've got, analysed and the data for. And then it's the science behind these guys, and these guys with the big stretched heads. People just don't know enough about them. They're not little men from Mars running around. They're not sort of dead greys from the past. They're all
actually stretched with what? They'd wrap wire around their heads? How did they do that?
Well, there are 2 kinds of heads. I'll just give you some idea of what we're talking about here. Let's see. There we go. And some of these guys have got really enormous heads, real huge craniums.
Oh, yes, pointed.
Well, what seems to have happened is there's the DNA version, the natural version. And the reason we know that that's natural is because in the Paracas case, the ladies are actually giving birth to babies who've already got massive heads. So they're reproducing. So it's genetic. And the heads are different. The way the skull's structured, the sutures, the position of the eye sockets and the hole at the back, which I think is called the fremen. It's all different. It's genetic. But at the same time, there must have been something about these guys that was worth copying. So human beings have tried to copy it. And that's where you get heads that are bound. So they're called cradle boarding, and they put flat boards on, which causes the skull to stretch, or they use material. They bind them using material and bandages. And so you've got your natural crania, and then you've got copies of the crania, which clearly when you make a human head bigger, it must do something. It must make them, significantly better as human beings. There's something to be gained from it. And most of the people with the big heads, especially over on your continent in America, a lot of the American Indians, when they stretch the heads of their infants, they then become the ruling class. So you end up, there's a whole tribe, it's not a very nice name for them, they're called the Flathead Indians. And the Flathead Indians, the ruling class among them were the ones with the biggest heads. So these guys at the top of the tree with these enormous crania must have had greater capacity. Goodness only knows what it does, because the bits that it makes bigger, things like, telekinesis, mind reading, being able to tell the future, communion with God, all your survival skills, just all that part of the brain that we can't really get a handle on, that's sort of at the back, is suddenly bigger. Who knows what that's going to do? That's really going to revolutionize the way that person's living.
We've heard tales of people in modern times even doing strange things with their skulls, and you've heard them too, like poking something into this area, the third eye, to try to get it to activate. Same thing with the top of the head, opening it up to the chakra at the top. Have you heard about what are they doing these days?
Yeah, there's a whole chapter in the book, and I think I end it by saying don't try this at home. Because especially in the Victorian era, they had this thing called trepanning, and they would cut sections of the skull out and they would drill into the skull, and they would really mess about with it. What they discovered is if you remove parts of the skull, or if you leave the sutures open, then the brain actually functions better because it's got more space. Okay, so that's what they discovered that they'd achieved. But you've also got to remember, as an archaeologist, I know that in like 40,000 BC, they were drilling holes in skulls.
They were?
Using flint tools. So the idea of drilling holes in heads is not new. But like you say, don't try this one at home.
No.
The consequences can be quite drastic. But there are people as well who are born, this is going to amaze you, with either no brain at all. So you end up with somebody that's just got tissue and an enormous gap. Or you end up with somebody born with brain that's liquid. Now, the liquid brains are particularly unusual. Now, they used to turn up a lot in autopsies. Now, they tend to find them when they do CT scans. But, I mean, I've actually met somebody. There was, at one point, there were 3 people that were known to be alive in this country with liquid brains. And one of them lived just up the road from me here, in a city not far from here. And I actually met him because his girlfriend was a potter and she was making pottery and stuff. It's a long story. His party trick was to put a torch on the side of his head and the beam would come out the other side. You know, this enormous circle of light. And his brain was liquid. You can actually look that up. You can go on the internet. There's a child as well that was born with 80% liquid brain, and as he's gradually got older, they did a TV program on him. I think it was called actually "The Boy with No Brain," and his brain solidified. It came back, you know. So it's not totally uncommon, but that does indicate that we really have not got a handle on how things work. You know, all this other stuff that's going on, you know, drilling holes, giving it space, size, you know, fluidity, how the electric side of it operates. We don't completely have a handle on that at all. You've only got to, I mean, I'll give you a great example. You've only got to look at, it's not in the book, but if you start looking into things like epilepsy, you know, that is a real taboo subject in medicine because nobody knows what the hell's going on. You know, it's quite common. There's a lot of people suffer from that.
Right.
All different.
We don't know how anesthesia works. We don't know. There's another example of it, but we use it all the time.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, you bring up so many important things to consider. Do you know? Because I know you're a world traveler. Are you familiar with the figurines at Acambaro in Mexico, where they had dinosaurs and people riding dinosaurs, and yet museums refused to carry these artifacts because, again, it didn't go along with their timeline, where they said dinosaurs and people didn't exist together, but these figurines proved them wrong.
Well, I'm going to be as generous as I possibly can be with this one, okay? If you actually ask the place where they're stored, if you ask the guy who's the custodian, he will tell you that those figures have been turning up over an enormous period of time. So the collection might have started, let's say hypothetically, a couple of 100 years ago. Somebody brought one in, and then it's kind of ballooned since then. So in archaeological terms, again, a percentage of them, tiny percentage of them, might be a genuine attempt by ancient civilizations to reproduce that. But it's been swamped by what we'd regard as fakes, because you can't tell the difference between the later ones and the earlier ones. Yes, there are stylistic differences and things change, but you know, it's just phenomenally difficult to say what's going on there. If you want to go down the dinosaurs and man route, there's better examples than that particular collection. There are a lot of figurines of people with enormous heads. I mean, the ones that spring to mind that are particularly good. Have a look at Akhenaten and his family in Egypt. You know, the Amarna period. All the princes, all the princesses. You know, Akhenaten himself, Tutankhamun to some extent. They've all got these enormous heads. You know, right. So that sort of thing turns up. But if you want to look into dinosaurs and man at the same time, Porksley Riverbed in Texas is particularly good because there's 2 sets of tracks there which are in, I think it's Triassic stone. I can't be sure. Might be Jurassic, actually. No, can't be sure entirely which. Anyway, it's in prehistoric stone. And there's 2 sets of tracks. One's a dinosaur and the other's a bloke, and both of them are running. But you can't make your mind up who's chasing who. Oh. But they're both there at the same time. Right. So there's bits and bobs like that. I mean, the whole chronology does fall apart for dinosaurs when you really start looking at it. Here's a story
that I heard that I know is true, because one of the people who was interested in the Acambaro figurines acquired some, and he was the inventor of the Bell helicopter.
Okay.
He was big into paranormal, and so he got some of these figurines. He gave one of them to a scientist friend of his up in Ossining, New York. She took this, it was called a creator god, and it had fluted ears. And she put it in a cage with some mice. She came in the morning, and the mice had fluted ears.
Wow.
That is pretty.
For heaven's sakes.
Now,
Wow.
this gentleman who invented the Bell helicopter, he took some of these figurines and he put them up and around in his office. And they creeped him out so badly. And he was not somebody to be easily creeped out. He had to pack them away. He had to take them out and pack them away. So much like the crystal skull in the British Museum that had a life of its own, these had a life of their own. And the fact that they were able to transmute the ears of these mice in one night in the cage with them really says something about their life. So I think there's a lot to the original Akhenbach figurines, not the fakes, obviously. I'd love to get my hands on some of them and do some communications with them. But
it is genuinely frustrating, and I've really come to notice it in the last year. I did something for Ancient Aliens. I did their program on crop circles, and they did a brilliant program on crop circles. I think it's episode 2 of season 19. And if you watch that, it's an absolute lesson in sorting out the genuine from the fake. And it just frustrates me that human beings, for some reason, have got to fake stuff.
Yes.
Why do we do it? Do you know what I mean? That usually is the real thing. You've got the genuine real thing. And then somebody just comes along and cashes in on it and starts producing fakes.
Yeah.
And it really does muddy the waters, you know. And that just, I mean, as somebody who's an investigator, it drives me nuts.
Oh, God.
Absolutely crazy. You could pick any subject and, you know, chances are there will be genuine and fake. Guaranteed.
It's the same with UFO stuff. I mean, now that everybody and their brother has a camera in their cell phone, you don't know how to tell the difference. And then with CGI being so advanced, it's like, who knows? It makes it very, very challenging. And plus, there's government disinformation where they love to muddy the water. Yeah, it is so frustrating, Mark. You bring up a point that has bothered us.
Right.
Time. Yeah, makes it very tough. But you've got your own original crystal skull.
Yes, lucky you.
Yes, no doubt about that. But oh my goodness! So, what is your next book going to be about?
Well, I'm working on 2 at the moment, and they're almost diametrically opposed. But as people very often say, the serpent eats its tail. So maybe they're not. Maybe they're not so opposite. One of them, the working title is Keys to the Temple, or the keys to the beliefs of the Knights Templars, or, you know, something to do with the temple in Jerusalem or whatever. And it's biblical stuff. So it's kind of a Bible book, but not. It's looking at all the bits that you can't get hold of, you know, and Dead Sea Scrolls, Nag Hammadi Library, all the different gospels that have been found, everything that's turned up sort of in the last couple of 100 years, which academia and religion have buried. So I'm kind of pulling that together, and it's going to be something similar to the King Arthur book. So it's quite a big one. I've been on it a long time. I started it in the 1970s. It's time to put that one out. So that one's going.
Well, you've got to promise us that we can get a copy.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're almost out of time again. Oh my God.
Well, I was going to say, and the other part, the tail part of it, is I'm doing a book on practical magic. So, what happens when you wake up in the morning? How do you make your day magical? You know, so that's going to be a tiny book. It's going to be a bit more
sounds fabulous.
More like that one.
Great.
Mark, thank you so much. Please keep us posted on your books. We want to have you back again.
Well, if you want any books, get them from Amazon. There you go. I've got the advert in.
We have got to get those.
Definitely.
Everybody, thank you for joining us. We'll be back next week. Another great show. Until then, we'll see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Good night.